Hello and welcome to another edition of the SpareTime podcast sponsored by ADR Wear. And our special guest for this edition is Andrew Fefer, who's a bowler, of course, but he's also the creator, producer, and the host of Bowling With The Fef. So welcome, Andrew.
Guys, it is an absolute pleasure to be here. I'm so glad that Ben reached out. Always cool to see new content on bowling, no matter where it comes from, around the world, which really makes this special that you guys are doing that from England and, found me in America. So this is just really special for me, and I hope it's the same for you.
Yeah, it is. Whereabouts are you in the U.S. at the moment?
So I live in Wisconsin. The city I live in is Altoona, which is, if you're familiar with where the Twin Cities of Minnesota are, Minneapolis and St. Paul, we're about, I'd say, maybe 75 miles east of Minneapolis and St. Paul. So we're in Wisconsin, but the closest major city is in Minnesota.
Oh, okay, yeah, and I don't know what it's like there, but it's going to be pretty cold up in that part of the U.S. in beginning of February.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a roller coaster around here. We've had a very mild week. But we had a few days that were cold before that, and then some more mild. So, they say in Wisconsin, if you don't like the weather, that's okay. It'll be different tomorrow.
Yeah. No, we have variable weather, but it's been pretty bad this last month or so.
That's
Okay.
England. Honestly, in England,
Yeah.
4 seasons in the same day.
yeah, the fact that we do bowling, it has its perks, because when you're traveling and it's torrential rain, you're walking the bowling alley, getting absolutely soaked. You walk back out after 6 games, and it is the hottest you've seen it this year.
Sure.
And I walked out of bowling alley the other day, and well, it was the first time I'd seen sun in about 4 months.
Oh
Yeah.
wow. Okay. Yeah, it's been kind of gloomy around here too. But yeah, that's the great thing about bowling. No matter what the weather's doing, sunny and 100 or 6 feet of snow, you're still good in a temperature controlled climate, in your local bowling center.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we probably chosen a bad time to do this tonight because I know this is going to be going live in March, but the US Open is on right now as we're talking,
Yeah.
and I think it's it's Jason Belmonte and Kyle Troopers playing. So I know you've got a screen there; you can see what's happening. We can't. We've only got one screen, so maybe you can keep us up to date with what's going on as we go through the podcast. So
Yeah, sure. Well, I was going to say right now, Troop is ahead. They're 3 frames in. Belmo just left a split and it ended up being an open. So he's got 35 through 3. But he's down 34 now. So he needs to get his striking shoes on if he wants to catch up with Kyle.
I'll take the hit for planning the podcast at a horrible time.
Yeah, yeah. Who have you got your money on to win?
Oh boy, how can you, and Belmo just struck there. How can you bet against him? I mean, even when he's down, it's so tough. But I think the safe bet is Anthony Simonson. He's only got to win 1 match. And as we've seen through the first 2 matches, really a mark has made the difference in each. So it's who can fill frames, who can throw a big shot when the pressure's on, and on a pattern that's really giving them, a tight window for error. So it's exciting stuff, as the U.S. Open always is. And boy, what a Final 5! It's incredible, and it's certainly as exciting as was billed leading up to this.
Yeah, the PBA always is. So moving just a little bit from bowling. I mean, it's still on bowling, obviously, but you're first and foremost a bowler. But what was the inspiration to start a podcast? What was the inspiration to starting Bowling with the Fef?
So like you said, I've been a bowler for the better part of 30 years. I was in a summer league with a couple of my buddies here, and we were sitting at the bar after our bowling. And I was talking to them about starting a Facebook page. Hey, what if I did a Facebook page about bowling? And it was just kind of an idea that, I mean, neither of them seemed all that excited about it, but it was just kind of rolling around in my head for a while that I wanted to do something a little bigger, social media wise for bowling. It just so happened that summer, my day job sent me to a conference in Anaheim, California about video and social media video. And this is 2019, so we're pre-pandemic. But everybody was talking about live streaming in terms of marketing your business, just all about live streaming. It's the newest thing. But the advice that they were giving to people was, don't worry about being camera shy. You can do this. You may feel nervous about it now, but get a few reps in and you'll be good. Well, I have 16 years under my belt in local television. I was an anchor, a reporter, basically any position you can think of in a newsroom that doesn't involve the weather, I've done at one time or another. So my thought was, point me to the camera, I'm ready to go. But I had no gear. So I had to buy some gear, a camera, a computer, and mics and all that. And, after time passed and I was able to accumulate enough to get started, my thought was always bowling. And I thought, why not, kind of hone some of the skills that I've learned from my career in news and apply it to what I have the deepest passion for, and that's the sport of bowling. And that's kind of where I come out on interviewing people, because that's what I like to do. And, I hope it resonates with people. Sometimes, as any content creator, you have these periods of, wow, this is really getting some traction, and man, I wish this would get some more. But it's been a blast. I mean, being able to create and maintain a community like this is just awesome.
I mean, it's good. We have some great opportunities. I mean, we do, and obviously you've done a lot more than us, where we get to talk to PBA players and that sort of thing. And I mean, there's a lot of people would really love to do this, and we're so lucky to be able to have a conversation directly with the PBA players. I mean, we had Richie Teese on. Well, I don't know when it's going out, but it was early on this week that we did.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks ago. I don't know. The timeline is just screwed up. I don't know. I don't know what's going on when, but Ben does all of that.
I decided that because what we did last year was basically like, we'll do like every other week we'll do a podcast, and then I did it, and then thought, I got 2 weeks to record, and I was like, okay, awesome. But he's bowling this event this week, and next week I'm bowling an event. And I'm just like, right, this isn't going to work. So this year, I thought we'll be planned, and we'll fly in like a load of guests. So we're like, we're into like April time with guests now. Like, and it's the same with you. I think I spoke to you on the phone, and you were like, yep, sometime in 2 months' time.
Yep. And in the recorded version of like you guys do, it's great to kind of batch record, and then you're not under pressure to get a guest. My shows are all live. So I'm kind of under that constant pressure to book out, several weeks. So I'm not, oh my gosh, I don't have a guest and the show's coming up next week. So far I've been lucky. That hasn't happened yet, but I'm looking for the wood to knock on. Hopefully it doesn't.
Yeah. Another question I was going to ask you. I mean, obviously we're going to be recorded here tonight. You were live. What made you decide to do it live rather than the way we do it recorded?
That kind of harkens back to my days in news. I was always big on live reporting. I've always felt that it was the one thing that we had in local TV that kind of either kept us up with what was going on the internet or social media, or got us out ahead of it. I was really fortunate to be in a newsroom that had a lot of live gear for its size. And when I started managing that newsroom, I really emphasized that these reporters need to be out live introducing their stories. So much so that I would often set up the camera and do the live shots, shoot them myself. So you fast forward to this, I always felt that, having those skills and that passion for live kind of put me in a position to do this in real time, make it interactive, and really kind of go to my strength with it.
I mean, the advantage of doing it live, I mean, I've seen when people are making comments on YouTube, and you can actually put them up on the screen. I mean, that's just another thing to think about. Fortunately, we don't have to do that, but it's great to have that audience interaction when you're actually going out there live.
And that takes practice too. If you look at the early episodes of my show, I kind of waited until the very end and said, okay, let's go through all the comments. And it was kind of clunky and didn't really, it was tough to get, perspective on what exactly they were talking about. So now I just kind of go at it as quickly as I can. And like I said, it takes practice, but I really feel like, the viewers really appreciate having their comments, up there and posed to the guests in real time like that.
Yeah, it gives them a good opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah, for sure. Especially like you said, you've had the, the good fortune to have some PBA players on. And so have I. And it's great to be able to say, okay, everyone, now is your chance to talk to someone like Nate Stubler and ask the question that maybe you've been thinking of, but don't really have the platform to ask him on.
Yeah, it does. One thing I noticed when I first looked at your channel on the logo you've got is BWTF, and for the B is in a bowling ball and a WTF. The first thing I saw was WTF. Was that intentional?
It's funny that I didn't create that logo. The logo was created by my sponsor. His name is Jim Lucas. He runs a company called Chip Magnet, and they have kind of a graphic designer on retainer. So he's like, let me take this over. Let me take this on. And that's kind of what he came to me with. And if you know Jim, that's kind of his personality. He can get you with a little shock value. So I saw it and I laughed because I knew that was his personality. But is it Whiskey Tango Foxtrot? Not really. It's with the Fef. But we've had a good laugh about it, in the months since then, and I just decided to keep it.
Is that Chip Magnet or Chick Magnet? Which one?
Chip, CHIP.
Oh, Chip. Okay. What does that business do?
So they make salsa, and they also make like barbecue sauce and relish, but salsa is their main offering, and it's he's a guy who I've bowled with off and on for the last 20 years. So when I started this up and he came to me and said, I want to back this, I want to put something behind this, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And he's been with me ever since, about, gosh, I'll guess maybe the past 100 episodes or so. And he's been in my corner and I try to be in his, and still bowling teammates every week. So we talk about the show all the time, and it's just a really good partnership.
Mm-hmm. I'll be honest, I admire your consistency. I know us recording ourselves, we've had times where we've had cancel on people have cancelled on us, and especially when you were like, before we weren't as organized, it's like, oh, well, we're recording, it's got to go out 2 days time, and I've just lost my guest.
Yep.
So
don't get it twisted. I mean, that's happened to me too. I've had guests not show up. I had a week where some of my family members had COVID, and I wasn't able to, I was just kind of juggling other things and couldn't get the show on and had to delay some things. So I appreciate the compliment, but I think with all of us, in content creation, we're human beings. We have lives outside of this. We have lives outside of bowling. Sometimes things happen. And I think it's important for people who are either in content creation or thinking about getting into it to remember that, this is always going to be here. You've got important things that maybe take priority over this, either from time to time or a lot of the time. And it's okay to let that, let important things take care of, take priority over this, because it'll always be here. YouTube isn't going anywhere. I think the interest in this stuff isn't going anywhere. And that's kind of how I think about it when, an unfortunate thing like that would happen.
Yeah, I've had a few people say to me, "Oh, this is really cool that you're doing this," and I've spoken to a good amount of people who will go, "Oh, who have you got on this week?" And I'll go, this guy," and they're like, "Wow, I want it." I'm jealous, but a lot of them have said to me that are sort of like, "Oh, well, I want to, but I'm a bit nervous too. But before I started the podcast, I started with vlogs, and putting out a vlog camera in England, you get some looks. Because it's not like America where, Darren, Tang, Kyle, and all these other people who were already vlogging. As far as I'm aware, I was the first person to do it in England. So,
Oh, cool.
up the
Yeah.
boys.
And we get looks too. I mean, Brad and Kyle and the house, those guys, Beef and Barnsey, they're not coming in, to my neighborhood. There's no center here that could accommodate a PBA event. They're just too small. So I still get some looks too, but you kind of have to get into the mindset that, hey, it's, when you have permission to do this in the place you're trying to do it, you have a job to do. It's, for me, it's not my primary 9 to 5. It's a side hustle. It's something I do almost as a hobby or a side project, but it's important to me. And, you kind of fight through those things. And that's another thing that you learn in TV news. Everybody's going to tell you, no, you can't shoot here. No, I don't want to talk to you. No, you can't report that. No, you can't be here. And it's a challenge to find your way around those things sometimes. But in the end, the show must go on. The story must be told. The time must be filled. So you learn to get into that mindset of, no, we're going forward with this, and it may not take the exact form that we thought it would 3 hours ago, but it will move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's one of those really where you've just got to suck it up, and I think especially sort of you live streaming it. I've had a couple people who have like sent me pictures watching my stuff, and you kind of sit there thinking, hey, people watch this? Like,
But I certainly do watch it because, I mean, we've been in bowling centers and people have come up and talked to me as though they knew exactly who I was, and I hadn't got a clue who they were.
Yeah.
And when this first started to happen, I'm thinking, why is this happening? Then it dawned on me that I've been watching the podcast.
Yeah.
But it was strange that these people who I'd never seen in my life before seemed to know my name and who I was and things like that. But so that was a bit of a strange experience.
Yeah, but in the end, I mean, isn't that cool? To know that, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here in front of an electronic box, just, speaking about what I love. And there are people not only consuming this, but, recognizing me for that. I always thought that was cool about this. And, it always gives me a little smile when I go to a tournament or, go out and live stream somewhere and someone says, hey, you're the Fef, aren't you? And I say, yes,
I think in the UK, the culture is a little bit different because, I mean, I've been to the US quite a lot, and you can be standing in a line in the US and somebody will start a conversation with you.
Yeah.
You stand in a line in the UK and somebody talks to you and it's like, what is this? What do you want? Why is he talking to me? And it's a different culture. So we're in a bowling center and somebody comes up and starts talking to me I've never seen before. And it's like, what do you want? Why is he talking to me? But until I realized that the reason why people were talking to me is what they knew me. So it's a little bit of a cultural thing, I think, here in the UK.
Sure. Yeah. But I mean, it also proves that the bowling community, as a whole is tight and is, willing to, show their appreciation for the stuff that you're doing and the stuff that they're interested in. And, and that can take many forms too. But yeah, like I said, I always get a kick out of that. And I bet you guys do too.
Well, one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of the guests that we've had on seem to be, we have a quick chat with them after we finished, after the recording finishes, and they seem to be very appreciative of what we do. And I think that bowling is one of these sports that doesn't really get the media coverage that it deserves, and as a result, it doesn't attract the level of sponsorship that some of the sports do. And I think it's important to get that media coverage to try and promote the sport, and it'll create more sponsorship opportunities. I mean, how important do you think podcasts like what we are doing are to helping to promote the sport of bowling overall?
I think they're very important. There are limited opportunities on the biggest stages. We were talking about the US Open, which is going on as we're recording this. And that broadcast on Fox here in the States kind of got shifted a little because of a World Cup
Yeah, World Cup draw.
reveal of a site, for a World Cup game. Well, you could see on social, everybody in bowling is, pulling their hair out because they want to see the US Open. There's such a hunger for it. And with that limited, window for the mainstream television platform or whatever else, I think it behooves the rest of us to tell the stories that there is demand for, but maybe can't fit into a 2-hour television broadcast. That's kind of the inspiration behind why I do things the way I do. I think there is definitely a demand for PBA players. There's a demand for PBA competition and PWBA competition and the highest levels of sport. And don't get me wrong, if EJ Tackett finishes his run on the US Open and sends me an email message saying he wants to be on the show, I will get him on the show. But, I also give that opportunity to folks who are not EJ Tackett, who maybe don't get the phone calls from other live streams or podcasts saying, come on, tell us your story. Because there are so many stories of the characters in this sport that, either don't get recognized or just aren't known. And what I do is I hope that I'm a platform to tell those stories and, show folks that maybe this bowling community, even though it spreads around the world and it seems so large when you really think about it, maybe it's just a little bit smaller. Maybe we're a lot more alike than than we think.
Yeah, talking about the U.S. Open, I mean, I think I'm going for Jason Belmonte. But what's the situation at the moment? Who's still in? Who's out?
Well, the situation in the moment is they're in commercial.
Oh.
So
As usual.
I didn't catch exactly where they're at because I kind of got engrossed in the conversation here. But I bet if you give me a couple minutes, I can swing back to that.
Yeah, are you going for Anthony Simonson? I think I'll go for Jason Belmonte. So we'll see who's right in maybe about 30, 40 minutes or something like that.
I'm with Simon on that one. I think
Yeah.
the way that man's been recently, he's just built different, really, isn't he? I think you look at the qualifying results, and it's like, okay, so I think, like, who was it? I think Richie at one point was in second, like at plus 340 or something, and then you should look up who's first. Anthony, okay, plus 700. Like, he's an absolute joke. Like, just what that man can do with a bowling ball is it's just mesmerizing. Back up, normal, anything, just wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. And I wish there was more. I guess I wish it was easier for us to express how incredible that is, how difficult that is to do what Simo does, what Belmo does. Because my fear is always that to the casual viewer, it's a guy rolling a ball down a lane and knocking over pins. And it's what I do on a Saturday night, with my buddies. That difference, it's tough to get that to translate through the TV screen or even, with what we do by showing and talking about it. I hope that we get closer to that by our descriptions of how difficult that is and how he's hitting quarter boards on, at 45 feet down the lane. But yeah, like you said, Anthony Simonson is just an incredible athlete. And I'll underscore that. He is an athlete. And I think more people need to understand that, competition, high level competition in bowling requires athletic ability. There's just no way around it. And although that takes many levels and many forms, we are athletes. And I think that they need to be, especially the best in the world, need to be respected as athletes.
Yeah, you mentioned like athletic ability, and I know, you look at some bowlers even on the tour, you go, he's not athletic, he's this, he's that. But me myself bowling, around Europe, in America, I've bowled for 16, I've got about a bit, and just bowling maybe like 15 games in a weekend or 8 games in a weekend. I remember before when I was like 12, 13, and I went up to 14 pounders, and I was bowling here, there, and everywhere all the time, and it just took such a toll on my body. Like I was probably about this far away from breaking my back. I genuinely went to physios and all sorts, and they're like, you need to sort yourself out. Like whatever you're doing, like you've messed yourself up. But now I mean, like I work with my college is really good for me. Like work with strength and conditioning trainers who work with professional athletes all the time, and think a lot of people underestimate how much work goes in off the lanes, just to counteract what's going on the lanes. I mean, to bowl 40, 50 games. I mean, you saw with Thomas Larson in the US Open, he dropped out because he smashed his fingers, but just there's so many different things that can go wrong, and so many different variables in bowling. And if you're not in top shape, you can rip your thumb open, you can pull a muscle, and that's you done. We've all bowled through injuries, and it's difficult, and you sort of think, how can you get injured? He's throwing a ball, but it happens. I think even with the best people, it happens. And
Sure,
maintaining your body off the lane is so important to reach a high standard. It's a lot of what happens in bowling goes unnoticed because, like say, with football, for example, or soccer, as you'd call it, people know, oh well, they're training, they're running out and stuff. But I think with bowling, because it's so televised on this one bit, it's like, well, what goes on, after.
yeah,
I think.
yeah.
But,
By the way, I should mention that Belmonte's out. It's Troop versus Simonson in the final, which just got underway. So, unfortunately, Dad, I think you took one on the chin this time. But you know as well as I do, we haven't seen the last of Belmont.
Yeah, lucky I didn't put any money on that then. Yeah, the thing that you've done, which we've never done, I don't know if we ever do it, but you've live streamed some events yourself. I mean, we have a guy here in the UK called Thomas Gross, and he has a live streaming channel called Riding with a Ditch, Riding in a Ditch.
riding the ditch.
Eh?
Riding the ditch.
Riding the ditch. Sorry, not riding in the ditch. I should know what it is because we had him on a few weeks ago. Riding the ditch. Yeah, I couldn't think of the name there.
Yeah.
What was how often have you live streamed events, and what sort of setup do you need to do that?
Well, I've live streamed, I want to say, gosh, I'll say maybe 10 times or a dozen times. I haven't done a ton of them. And when I started this out, I didn't really envision myself live streaming tournaments. That just seemed like it required too much bandwidth. And when I live stream an event, I know full well that I don't have the gear and the bandwidth that some of the big time live streamers do. The folks who are behind Bowl TV, Phil Brylow, Emil Williams. These guys have cameras upon cameras, computer systems that are bulky enough to handle all this live video. They've got split screens with where you can clearly see the scoreboard and all that stuff. How it started for me was about, I want to say maybe 35 episodes into the show. I brought on a PWBA player named Nicole DePaul. At the time, she was the head coach at Upper Iowa University. And she had just gotten the green light to hold an NCAA bowling tournament at a center in Waterloo, Iowa. And after I had her on, she asked me, hey, I'm thinking about live streaming this. What do you think? And, I was naive enough to think, oh, she just wants to know, what I'd suggest, or if there's anybody I'd refer her to, or what kind of equipment she'd need. So I typed out some kind of answer along those lines. And she wrote back and said, no, we're interested in having you come out and live stream it. And I was like, whoa, not something I had really thought of. So again, it's okay, what kind of gear do I have? What kind of gear do I need? How am I going to do this? What length of time? And, I was again, and I keep going back to the local TV thing. You think about all the gear and the people and the technology that it takes to put on a television broadcast, and it just blows your mind. But when you're live streaming a tournament on YouTube, I think you have to go in with the expectation that good is good, and perfect is the enemy of good, because things are going to go wrong. Things might happen that you don't catch right away or even know are going on. Sometimes you have live commenters telling you, "Hey, can't hear it," or "Hey, there's music on in the background. We're trying to listen to what you're saying." And you can correct that stuff on the fly. But I guess on the micro level, I've got a laptop, I've got a couple microphones, a couple cameras, and a couple lights and cords to hook myself up between them. On a lot of cameras, you need a capture card to connect it to the computer, or you need an audio interface to connect your audio in to the computer. And again, a lot of the success or failure in live streaming a tournament depends on the internet situation at the center you're at. I've heard Mike Flanagan from Bowl TV talk about how few centers can accommodate a Bowl TV production because of the strength or lack thereof of their internet service. And that's a hurdle that I've had to get over in some of my live streams too. But you work with the centers, and they're usually pretty receptive to finding a way to beef up their internet signal for something like that. Um, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of energy to get something like that done, especially when you're on your own. But man, when you can finish it up and you have the chance on the car ride back to kind of sit back and take in the impact of what you just did, bringing that coverage to however many people who couldn't get there, didn't want to be there, are too far away to get there. It really kind of makes you it's a satisfaction that I think you can only really understand by doing it.
Yeah, I mean that's the technical difficulties you mentioned, but I mean commentary is a lot harder than it looks because
Yes.
especially in bowling.
yeah, and well, in anything, but yeah, in bowling because you just got to listen to the commentators, and they have good knowledge, and they need the good knowledge because you can't just sit there just saying, "Oh, he's missed a 10 pin, or he's got a spare." You can't just sit there and point out the obvious, what everybody can see.
Yep.
You've got to make it interesting, and that's not easy. I mean, how did you manage to cope with that when you first started out?
Well, you have to have that in your mind kind of going into it. That tournament in Iowa that I mentioned happened 2 years in a row. I was able to live stream both of them. That Upper Iowa program has since dissolved. It doesn't have bowling at that school anymore, so they don't run that tournament anymore. But when I was in it, what I did was I asked around to either to Nicole, who was running things, or the coaches, "Hey, can you give me some background on some of the players? Can you tell me where they're from? Can you tell me maybe some big moments in their collegiate careers so that I can, give this some context and let folks know that, hey, this player who's up in the 10th frame right now, um, averaged 215 at her last tournament, which was also on a similar condition. Or, this team is ranked da 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 in the country because they have wins at X, Y, and Z." It's tough enough on a 2-hour broadcast like the US Open. It gets really tough in these tournaments that usually last 6, 7, 8 hours or more. And you plan, you use some institutional knowledge. If it's in my area, it's a little easier because I know a lot of the folks around here who bowl and some of their backstory. And sometimes you run into some luck too. You ask the right question at the right time. You're able to pull in somebody to kind of chat with you at the right time, and that all serves to help. But you're right, it's not easy. It's not something that you can just jump in the chair and do. But it can make the difference. It can make the difference because I think the worst thing is you are live streaming and a commenter comes on and says, didn't you know this person is legally blind, or is here after a loved one died, or something like that. And that's something that's really can make or break what you're doing, and make or break the credibility you have with your audience.
Yeah, I think commentary is so important because when I first started the bowl, I started the bowl probably about 3 years after you in 1980.
Before we were born.
Yeah, well, maybe I don't know how. Yeah, almost certainly. Well, not before, maybe before you were born, but not before everybody was born.
Do you know what? Honestly, whenever I join a team in a league, I lower the age average by at least 25 years.
So no, I started about 1987.
Okay.
And we had a bowling center here in Sunderland. It was 32 lanes. A really good center. It's not there anymore. They demolished it and built they built a supermarket in its place.
Oh.
But it was a really good center. I mean, it was a bowler's center. It wasn't, it didn't have all the machine, the amusement machines, the penny arcade type of thing. There was none of that as such. But so we started a bowl there, and he used to have we used to go on a Sunday night pretty late on after about 10 o'clock. So most of the place was empty. So they used to have the screens on the lanes that weren't being used. And it was showing bowling in the US. And we used to, obviously, while we were bowling, we were sort of watching this. And every now and again, the camera would pan into the crowd and pick somebody out. And the caption at the bottom of the screen is Fred's mom or something like that, or John's auntie, and that just, I don't know, we didn't have a clue what we were watching, but it just sort of grabbed our attention that we were watching this, and every now and again we'd just look up at the screen just to see what was going on. So I think that sort of trivia, if you like, is quite important to maintain people's interest in the commentary and watching the events.
Yeah, one of the great bowling YouTube channels out there is one that does a show called the Prodigy Bowlers Tour, and it's done by a gentleman in Kansas who basically does recordings at junior events and really makes them look and feel, frankly, like these PBA telecasts. And he does them by himself. I mean, he has helpers and things like that have come on over time, but he's got history in radio, so his voice is just awesome. And he's got graphics that he overlays in it after the fact. He does voiceovers. He knows everything about these kids who are in the competition. And what you said reminds me of one of his broadcasts where one of the bowlers was up in a big situation, I think in the 10th frame of a match or something like that. And he knew this kid's family was right behind him. Well, he didn't have a camera pointing that way. So he just took his phone and started shooting this as he's watching the main thing go on. And in post, he was able to put him on a split screen so you could see the kid making the shot and the reaction from the parents. And that's gold. I mean, it's absolute gold. And, to know that he, didn't have somebody else there to do that he just had the presence of mind to get a camera rolling on him is really cool. And I think that that really gives some added value for people who took the time to watch it.
I think it's what people relate to, because people relate to people, and especially other people that they recognize and people that they know. So I can see why that sort of thing is is going to get some attention on a live stream. It just adds something to it instead of just staring at the lane for however many hours, and to see the people around it. And that's what appealed to us when we were bowling back in 1987, the late 80s. and we were looking at these TV screens, and Fred's mom was up there, or whoever, and it just sort of it just did something to you. It just sort of captured your imagination, and I had no idea that in years to come that they,
your one dream was to be Ben's dad on a PBA telecast.
I'm not so sure about that, but it's just strange to think that in many years to come I'd be sitting watching the PBA, or I'd be in a bowling center in the US. I mean, we bowled in Vegas a couple of years back at South Point. I would never have guessed that back in the late 80s. So
I didn't even bowl when I started. I didn't even know you bowled when I started.
No, he didn't know I bowled. It was really weird the way that it happened, because I think when he was 8, his friend's mum said to his mum, "Look, I'm taking my son to a bowling club. Does Ben want to come along?" He said, "Yeah, we'll go along." And I went along, and after about 3 weeks, his friend decided he didn't like it and stopped doing it, but Ben continued to do it. Yeah. And the rest is history. But it wasn't until maybe after a year or two that I mentioned to Ben that I used to bowl and I was in a league, and he didn't never knew that. So people think that he bowled because I used to bowl, but it's not true.
By the way, as we've been talking here, Kyle Troop just won 223 to 181. So looks like we were all wrong, but yeah, Kyle Troop with his 11th title and second major, taking down just a murderer's row of competition. I mean, that's got to be the signature win of his career.
I've got to be honest. I do believe my mum predicted that.
Okay.
Because so it's my family situation is an odd one. Okay, because my mum, even though I've been around bowling since I was young, still knows next to nothing about bowling, and she just went, "Oh, get him on your podcast. I reckon he's quite good." So well, I predicted it.
You know what to say? Go with a fro.
The pro with the fro. Yep,
that's it.
Nice.
Yeah. And he's great. I had the opportunity to talk to him a couple of years ago at the World Series of Bowling, because it was in Milwaukee, which is about 4.5 hours for me by car. And what he shows you on camera is what he is. There's no faking it there. It's all genuine. And it was cool to have the opportunity to talk to him, but he's the kind of character that can really help us as we try to grow this thing.
I mean, we met him about 5 or 6 years back, because he came over to the UK, and there was there's a centre in Yorkshire called Shipley, and they had an event with 3 PBA bowlers there to give people advice and help, and just to be able to meet them. And there was Kyle Troop, there was Martin Larson, and there was Stuart Williams, and the 3 of them came over, and we had some interaction. We even have a picture with Ben with all 3 of them. So we briefly met them. But I think that Kyle Troop's good for the sport, because he's very recognizable, even to somebody who doesn't follow the sport. You see Kyle Troop once and you never forget him, because it's not just the afro, but it's the whole thing that he wears. The whole outfit. I mean, where he gets his pants from, I don't know. But
special made out.
Yeah, I think so. But he's a walking marketing machine, and he's so recognizable. And I like his social media, because I watch his social media, and he's driving to tournaments with Jesper Svensson and with Guppy in the back of the car, and he's saying where he is and what he's doing, and it's real. It's real. It's not manufactured. It's not. It's real life, and it's good to see sort of the real side of bowling.
And he elicits strong opinions. Like you said, he's got a lot of fans. People that like him really love him because of everything he is. Just like the haters can't stand him because he throws it with 2 hands and he has the giant hair and the crazy outfits. But any publicity is good publicity in the end. And there are a lot of people in the TV business that kind of live or die because, and not, not literally, but in their careers, because they either can or can't elicit that strong opinion from the people who are watching. There are a lot of perfectly good and seasoned and wonderful TV anchors that have had their careers stall because they didn't elicit any kind of opinion. They were just kind of there doing their thing. But to have someone who, Kyle Troop, Sean Rash, Pete Weber, guys who really play to this kind of stuff, not because of really some outward desire to, but because it's who they are just gold for this sport. And it's, I think it's what makes or breaks us in the sport as a whole, not only the PBA, but in bowling as a whole, because you got to have these characters. What's auto racing without a guy like Jeff Gordon, who had a lot of haters, but he also won a lot? What's tennis without John McEnroe, who, threw some unbelievable fits over his career, but he won a lot? These are the characters that we need in our sport, because that stands to keep us up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people that don't like two-handers, not to throw shade at anyone, but they're people that just can't bowl two-handed themselves, and they're a little bit jealous that we can use two-handed.
Exhibit A right here. I wish I could.
So I swapped to two-handed a few months back, in October, November time. And I've never once, as a bowler in the 7 years, I've been doing social media now about 3-4 years now, and I've never once gotten hate for anything. Went two-handed enough. There were some comments.
I have trouble in bowling one-handed, let alone two-handed.
Sure.
Yeah, but that's you.
And that's, that is part of our sport. And it's a big part of our sport right now. And it's something that's helping to drive young people into the sport and get them excited about it. There are people who don't like it, who think it should be a separate category from people who use a thumb. Whatever. It is what it is. It's a revolution in the delivery of the bowling ball, and it's within the rules. In the end, that's what it is, and it's not going anywhere. So I think we have to understand that it's a good thing for our sport, because it's just a new innovation that is within the rules and is very effective, in the hands of the person who is able to master it, like Troop, like Simonson, Belmonte, and on and on and on.
There's definitely pros and cons to each of them, though. So I think in a large capacity, there's definitely evens between them. Obviously, I've not bowled two-handed long, but there's sparing two-handed is a lot harder, because when you literally have the capability, I think I went from about one of the main reasons I swapped was, I spoke to Martin last and got told to, but my rev rate was like pot nothing, and whenever you went anywhere that was like an adult event or with any sort of meaning to the event, you were throwing your ball straight, and I was like, I'm not going to go very far with this. And we tried all sorts, and in the end I was just like, you know what, two-handed, it seems to work, and I think I doubled my rev rate overnight. But a big part of that is I struggled with my spares early on, and I still do now, because you don't have a thumb in there. It's so easy to put so much on your ball.
Yep.
Get in your hand. I must have driven my coaches up the wall, because we spent at least 2 months trying to get me to throw the ball up the back of it, because the whole time you're like, you try to get the straight shot release, and then it's like, right now you can throw the spare ball and you can hook it, but you're not gonna, and you're gonna want to throw it up the back so it's going this way and your ball doesn't move. And things like TenPinBens were the bane of my existence, and the amount of money my poor parents have spent on adjustments for me. I think I started, with normal inserts, and then it was like, we want it this way, and then we want it this way, and now I want a vacuum. And I think vacuums helps me with actually being able to control the ball. And so obviously sparing is a lot harder for two-handers, and in the same way, getting more revs is a lot harder for, one-handers, and speed's more difficult for two-handers. I think, it's the same with left and right-handers. There's events, there's patterns, there's centers that suit each individual bowler. And I think the diversity in bowling is compared to like a sport like NFL, where it's always the same size of pitch. You're always against the same amount of people. Where in bowling, you can turn up one week and go, this works. Turn up the next week, or even 2 shots later and go, well, what I've just done there doesn't do anything anymore. I think trying to
and look what's happening on the PBA tour. We've had 2 events so far, right? And although it's been one of each, Bill O'Neill won the Players and Kyle Troup won the U.S. Open. What have some of the big stories been? Well, in the Players, you had Ryan Barnes, who is a two-hander, starting to climb that ladder a little bit and ran into Bill, but really had a tremendous showing. In the U.S. Open, you had Landon Jordan, who's a 17-year-old two-hander from Illinois, who was up in the top 5 for parts of this tournament and ended up finishing 15th. So it definitely seems to be the way things are going. And I just think it's cool that the people who are able to do it are able to succeed so much with it.
Yeah, I mean, we had Ryan Barnes on. I don't think is the episode out yet?
4 weeks ago. It will have been a while ago.
Yeah, no, Ryan Barnes was only like less than 2 weeks.
But by the time this comes out, it'll be 4
okay.
weeks.
Yeah, the timeline's all messed up. But he was telling us that he bowled and then he just stopped for years, and then he started to bowl again. It's something I can't remember. It's about 5 years ago, something like that. So to from doing that to get to where he's got to is it's an amazing achievement.
Yeah,
and and it's, I'm sure that two-handed bowling is certainly played a part in that.
Oh yeah.
Just we talk about different people that we've had on. Who is the guest that you really would like on Bowling the Fef who you haven't had yet?
Man. Wow, that's a great question. And it's a safe question because by the time this comes out, I'm already booked about that far out, so I know who I will have, so I don't have to say, well, I wish I had blah blah blah, and then they end up coming on. My favorite pro growing up was always Dave Husted. I don't know what it was about his game, his ability to get inside and just whack them on TV better than most. He won 3 U.S. Opens. And he had that quiet confidence that really appealed to me as a junior. I would love to have him on someday, and I hope to. I don't know him personally, but hopefully someday that connection happens because he's still very entrenched in the industry as a proprietor. And I think he's the guy who I'd say, who would you like on most? Probably him right now.
I think social media is. I don't know how you get your guests on, but I know for me, having a okay social media presence is so beneficial. I mean, literally, I'll like walk at my post shop and go, I think we had Richie on, and I had a guy that bowls with Richie in England. And I was like, right, this guy's coming on, or whatever. What do you know about him? And it's like, well, I can't tell you that, but whatever. Or that can't be aired. But I think social media is so important to get people on because obviously, not everyone sees them, so people have DMs off and whatever. But just literally going, you know what, I want this guy on, let's just send him a message. I think it's so important. Like Martin himself, like I think we had a ran with a bit of a story of 6 years ago, 7 years ago, you were coaching me and I was watching you at the Weber Cup, and now a bowler next to you in the same competition. I think the whole technology side of it has built up so much with being able to get people on.
Yeah. Like you said, just message them. I mean, what's the worst they can say? No, right? Then you move on to the next. But yeah, the ability that we have to communicate to people from a distance, just like you reached out to me, is great. It's great for something like this, combined with the fact that our pros are so much more accessible than the pros in many other sports. Here I couldn't I couldn't imagine if I was doing a football show that I'd ever be able to just do message Jordan Love, the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers, and say, "Hey, come on my, my little football show, and we'll talk about, how you won a game in the playoffs this year." It just wouldn't happen. There are agents to go through and just all kinds of rigmarole. But here in bowling, it's so easy to get that access to the pros, and that makes that really cool. But in addition to that, as far as how I get my guests, um, I I have had, guests on that I've connected with through people I know. We had a family vacation that took us through Indiana on a day when the Storm Youth Championships was at Woodland Bowl, and Chris Vi was there. So I just walked up to him and asked him to be on the show, and he did it. I have, had other folks reach out to other people to be on the show, and they've ended up messaging me or emailing me right away. And the other thing is, at the end of every show, I ask my guests to challenge somebody else to be on the show. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. But I've gotten several guests who have seen that or heard about that and have written saying, "Yeah, let's do this."
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. The top bowlers are quite accessible, and I think
Mhm.
part of that is because the sport is maybe not as big as it could be. If
Yeah.
it became as big as football or whatever, then maybe things would change because agents would get involved in that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, when we were in Vegas a couple of years ago in South Point, we went to lunch in a restaurant in South Point, and then 3 tables away, who appears but Jason Belmonte?
Jim Carrey.
Yeah, and he wanted to get a selfie with him. I said, "No, wait till he's finished his meal." And
Yep.
then Jason sort of finished and stood up, and then he went straight up to him and got a selfie with him straight away. What we didn't know is he was there because he was going in to the SYC, and he was going to do a bit of a presentation, which was really interesting. And then every player there, and there was a lot of them, was going to get an opportunity to have a selfie with him. So we
cool.
didn't realize that. So he got, he stopped him in the restaurant, but he was more than willing to do that. So as you say, the players are really, really accessible, and that's great. So just coming on to, you talked about social media.
Yeah.
How do you promote your podcast? I mean, you've got about 1,600 subscribers. It's been going around about 4 years now.
Mhm.
What is it you've done to gain that traction?
Well, I think it's a multifaceted thing. I have a Facebook group, and as much as it may seem like a page, it's a group. And the difference between page and group, for those who aren't aware, is a page is basically a posting board for a person or an entity, and then people can kind of comment on it and react to what that person or entity says. In a group, yes, I create a lot of the posts in there, but others also have the opportunity to posts, original content. I've had other content creators promote their shows on the Bowling with the Fef group, and I'm fine with that. That's part of it. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok. The Instagram and TikTok are a little, I don't know, you'd say dormant. I don't post to those a lot. But as Ben alluded to earlier on, the consistency helps. I like the live element of this too much to go away from it. And because it's live, I don't really say, okay, it's going to be Wednesday night at 7. It's going to be Monday night at 8. They tell you in, the people who are experts of live streaming and social media say, you've got to go on at the same time every week and be consistent in that way. And in a perfect world, I would, but things happen. People's schedules are different than mine. Sometimes mine fluctuates in a given week. Sometimes other people do. And the YouTube thing is cool because even though you're not watching one particular episode live, you can still see it on replay. And to be frank, most of the people who view Bowling with the Fef are viewing it on replay after the fact. So through social media, I promote it. I think the consistency kind of it does a lot for promotion, because YouTube helps it, get to more eyeballs. Um, but yeah, I I don't think word of mouth is a huge thing for me. I think, it's you kind of shoot for it at the macro level, the bigger picture, rather than just telling a bunch of buddies in your league, "Hey, I do a show on YouTube." I feel like, after time and after growth, those people will find out about it organically.
Did you think your audience is primarily US based, or have you got more of an international coverage?
I'll tell you, I was very surprised to take Ben's message when he said that you guys are in England and wanted to, to collaborate like this. I think it is primary US based. I could be wrong. I'm sure there, deep in the annals of YouTube, there are analytics that show where the viewers are primarily from. Um, but I guess you never know till you do it and really find out where people are from, to truly know.
Yeah.
But if I had to guess, I'd say primarily the US and primarily the Midwest part of the US.
I'm pretty sure there's
I've got
something
mine.
in the analytics on YouTube that you
I've
can,
got mine.
yeah, you can tell which country people are in. So I think you
Okay.
can find out a pretty
So
easy. So
mine is probably not relative to everyone
Okay.
because a large part of my original sort of viewers were like, I went on my Instagram, which is obviously primarily English people because it's people that are in like the English bowling community, and I think a big portion of last year it was like only English people that came on. So I'm like 34% United Kingdom, 10% or 11% US,
Okay.
3.5% Japan, 3% Korea and Germany, 2% Australia, 2% Canada, and a few others. So it's a bit of a mix.
Yeah.
Obviously, some of them are probably just random bots and stuff, but for the majority of it, it's I I was aware that like most of your bowling audience is going to be American, so I can. In what we're recording this at, like what time's it now here? 11:30 at night for me. But we usually record at this time, and it'll go out at midnight on a Sunday night,
Yeah.
because we know that it's the Americans that you're going to get the viewership off rather than English people. And I suppose that you know the big part that we want to work on, and I'm sure you do as well, is just going, well, yeah, but we want to work on people and get people from all over the world to see bowling.
Sure. Um, Early in my run, um, I was kind of reaching out to people, hey, to pros, whoever, come on the show, come on the show. And one of them that I reached out to was Verity Crawley. And she answered right away, said she'd be happy to do it. Let's go. We set up a date and time, and we were off and running. And between the time that we scheduled and the time that we were supposed to record it, she had to go back to England. If you recall, she had a visa problem and had to go back to England as that got sorted out before she could return to the US. So this happened like the weekend before she was supposed to come on. And I reached out. I said, look, I totally understand you've got bigger fish to fry, but just know that if you want to do this from England, I will figure out a way to make it work on my end. And what I ended up doing is I was on live at 6 a.m. here. It was noon there, so it was convenient for her. But I remember she asked me, "Is anybody going to watch it at 6 a.m.?" And I said, "Oh yeah, yeah, people will watch it." Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And there weren't a lot of live viewers on it, but because the majority of the viewership is on replay, for a long time, that was my most viewed live stream in the history of the channel. I mean, it took probably another good year and a half before another one eclipsed it. So, it was worth the effort. And, you had somebody with the character of Verity to, to step up, give us the time to, to help put her out there and explain her story a little bit. And then she was willing enough to come back on after she had gotten back to the US and was about to bowl one of the national events in Minnesota. So yeah, I mean, the timing, ideally it's convenient for you. Ideally it's the same time every week, but if it's not, you know what? It can still work.
Okay, so what's next for Bowling with the Fef?
What's next? Boy, I don't have any solid plans for live streams of tournaments at this time. There's an event in Minnesota that might come up in as we get into spring here, but that's something that I haven't really solidified yet. In a perfect world, I would be going to the Chicago area this next week for the Illinois Open, because that's the next national tour stop and it's the closest one proximity wise to me. But the timing just didn't work out, so unfortunately I won't be able to go to that one. I do plan to go to the PWBA Twin Cities Open, which is coming up at the beginning of May. So I'll do recorded coverage from there, because Bowl TV is the exclusive live stream provider and they have the rights and all that stuff. But I'll follow along with the tournament, interview the ladies who are at or toward the top, and kind of provide some context for folks who maybe aren't able to watch Bowl TV and keep up with it that way. But other than that, it's just doing these live streams. It's sharing the stories of bowlers who people know and who they don't know. And I mean, it's like I said, it's a passion of mine. And I know, as well as you do, as well as every YouTuber out there, that this probably isn't going to be something that makes me rich or becomes my full-time job. But it's something I enjoy doing. And because of that, I'm just going to keep doing it. And let's just kind of see where this thing goes.
Yeah, you enjoy doing it?
I do have one question.
You're going to speak?
You mentioned that you like to challenge people. I'm curious, who would you challenge to come on the SpareTime podcast?
Ooh, to come on the SpareTime podcast, who would I challenge? Well, give me. I mean, you've had several guests that are touring pros. You've had some folks from your area. What's your bread and butter? Are you trying to get more pros, more folks from your area? I mean, is it a mix?
I mean, to be fair, obviously, pros are great and stuff, but we kind of want to explore the fact that there's more than just the bowlers, and we want to explore there's a whole world in bowling, which is why we get people like you on.
Okay. All right. I'll tell you, a whole world in bowling. How about another content creator? About 90 miles east of me in an area near Wausau, Wisconsin, which is like dead center of the state, is a gentleman named Ben Glasscock. He runs a channel called TenPin Life. Have you heard of TenPin Life?
I asked him to come on.
Oh, okay. And did he tell you?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, himself, obviously his channel, he hasn't been able to post much himself because he's he's extremely busy, but hopefully one in the future he will come on. Eventually, but he spoke to him. He's a great guy. He gave me some advice on my podcast as well. He's not really making content himself anymore either, because I don't think he has time or whatever.
Sure.
But, I've asked him, so possibly in the future, maybe.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll nudge him a little bit. I don't. We're not best of friends or anything. We just kind of see each other out and about. He's been at the PWBA event that I've been to. We've both been at the World Series of Bowling. But he is an incredible content marketer. He does it professionally. He doesn't do TenPin Life full time, as I'm sure you're well aware. But boy, he's got the gear. He knows how to tell a great story, and he's just got that drive. And he hasn't been doing it quite as long as I have, but he's really done some interesting pieces. And I think, he is also one who's geared toward growing the sport. He's a high school coach. Um, he's a bowling ball tester. I mean, I just can't say enough about the content that he does put out there. It's so good. So Ben, if you're watching this, I am challenging you to come on Spare Time. And if you don't see this, you will have received some kind of message from me telling you that. So come on, carve out an hour for these guys. It's good stuff.
Okay, Andrew, it's been great. Bowling with a Fef is great. We're going to be keep watching you and to see what you do. We do appreciate you spending time and the fact that we've taken you away from the step ladder in the US Open tonight, and you didn't see it, and neither did we. But yeah, we like to thank you very much. We're going to end it here because we've been live for about an hour and 11 minutes now, which is pretty long. But we could talk all night. But
yeah,
but we'll end it here. But thank you, Andrew. It's the end of this episode of the Spare Time podcast. If you like what you've seen here today, if you like and subscribe to the channel, we got plenty more guests lined up, plenty more people in the bowling world, and we'll be back again soon. So from me, Nigel, and from him, Ben, bye.